Can't quite believe it's been this long, but it's been 5 years and one whole branding change since my last video. And to celebrate, I'm back with the first video in a series looking at how the Assassin's Creed games have evolved over time, because why not? I've been streaming the entire series over on my Twitch channel, where I stream 4 days a week, Monday to Thursday, so please do feel free to drop in if you fancy it. I was initially a big fan of the Assassin's Creed games. In the lead up to the original's 2007 release, I was fully swept up in the hype surrounding this new franchise, and I will look forward to each new release in the series. This carried on until Unity, with that being the only game in the series I've started but never finished, and I never bothered with Syndicate or any of the new style games. I realised recently that, other than Black Flag, I've never gone back to play any of the games in the series after the following game was released, meaning it's been around 14 years since I last played the first game. Throughout that time, I have some long-held opinions of these games that I tend to bring up whenever the series is discussed. Black Flag is my favourite, but it's a bad Assassin's Creed game. 3 is missable. Brotherhood is the best game that isn't Black Flag, and so on and so on. In an attempt to prove that I have always been right about everything, I decided to play through the entire series in release order and see how they stack up against the rest of the series, and how they might compare to other similar games that have been released since. I'll be keeping a running ranking of the games as we go through as well, so by the end of all this I will have my definitive ranking of the Assassin's Creed series. So, we start with the series origins, not that one, Assassin's Creed, released in 2007 for PS3 and Xbox 360 and eventually ported to PC, and it will be the unmodded PC versions of these games that I will be playing, all of them purchased through Steam. This game marks the only one in the series I've played so far that didn't require a connection to Ubisoft Connect. There were some controller configuration issues at first, with the default layout being completely different to what it should be, but other than that I experienced no issues running this game at all. The narrative of these games can get pretty complicated to talk about, as there are arguably 3 separate stories all happening at the same time. What I had trouble with here was trying to remove what I already know about the story by having played future games from what is actually told to us here, and there does seem to be some inconsistencies between this game and others, though these can arguably be retconned and explained away. You play as Desmond Miles, an ex-assassin, current bartender, and essentially at this point just someone to ask questions on behalf of the player. Spoilers ahead for most of the series, by the way. In this game, we learn that the Assassins and the Templars have been fighting each other since the Third Crusade, and that the company holding Desmond, Abstergo, is a front company owned by the Templars. Abstergo have a machine called the Animus that lets people experience the memories of their ancestors, with Desmond being listed as the 17th subject to be subjugated to this procedure. They want him to relive the memories of his ancestor Altair to learn more about an ancient artifact called a Piece of Eden, specifically the Apple of Eden. This game establishes that this is a relic from a civilization that existed prior to humanity, and that all major breakthroughs across human history were uncovered from this mysterious race by the Templars. Throughout various pieces of dialogue, it's suggested that this Assassin and Templar war is actually more like a futile rebellion, as the Assassins are claimed to all be wiped out by the game's end.
That's been neutralized.
Looks like the cavalry won't be coming. What Lucy here is trying to say is that there aren't any assassins left to come for you. We've been very busy this past year, hunting down your little enclaves, your desert communes and whatnot.
Of course, from having played the sequels, we know that this just isn't true, but the Assassins are very much on the back foot. The modern sections of this game do a good job of establishing the backstory of this universe, while still leaving enough mystery to keep us interested in learning more. Or it did for me, anyway. One complaint about this game is that these modern sections, where you just get talked at and read some emails, regularly interrupts the gameplay of the historical setting that we all came here for. And I largely agree with that, but the game does go some way to give an in-universe reason for the regular breaks that Lucy insists Desmond has. Emails between Lucy and Vidic mention Subject 16, Desmond's predecessor, who we can assume died partially as a result of the bleeding effect, caused by spending too much time in the Animus, something Lucy is keen to avoid repeating. This is in contrast to the next game, where there are barely any modern day sections because they are deliberately encouraging the bleeding effect. I know just because something is justified doesn't make it enjoyable, but for me at least it helps. What doesn't make so much sense, especially after the universe gets expanded in future games, is how little Desmond knows about the Templars. Right at the start of the game, it's established that he is an ex-assassin.
You're an assassin.
That he escaped from them somehow. Fair enough, we don't know how long he'd been with the group when he left, but in this game he has seemingly never heard of Abstergo and thinks the Templars are just
old dudes with funny hats who sat around drinking beer and plotting world domination with, like, the lizard people.
No, except the part about world domination, I guess.
This seems very odd for an ex-member of a group whose sole purpose was to stop the Templars taking over the world. But anyway, the historical side of things is what we all came here to see with this game, and to my mind it largely still holds up today. The free running is clearly the star of the show here, and this whole world has been built to accommodate that. The game world consists of 3 major cities, the assassin's hometown, and a countryside area called Kingdom. Other than Kingdom, these areas are made up of lots of buildings covered in hand and footholds, ready for you to scramble all over and leap across. The game structure here is very linear for an open world game, as there are no side missions to complete or loot to seek out. The world essentially exists for you to climb all over and get chased through. As Altair, you have to eliminate 9 targets to regain your lost honour, as he starts the game as an arrogant dickhead before eventually becoming a semi-tolerable human being. You've likely heard this game described as repetitive, and it's with these assassinations that this is glaringly true. Each target requires you to take the same steps and complete copy-paste missions prior to taking them on, and you have no freedom in how to approach your target. Dialogue from the assassin mentor, Amuelim, suggests that this is apparently intentional. Assassins are supposed to appear as if from nowhere, very publicly kill their target, and then disappear into the crowd again. In gameplay terms, this means you can forget any kind of Hitman-esque experimentation. You watch a cutscene of your target being a complete and total bastard, then you run up and kill them. They may run away, or they may stand and fight, but you can forget any kind of 100% perfect stealth runs. With your target dead, you'll then be chased through the streets, and this is where I feel the open world justifies itself. The game has obviously been designed with free running at its core, and these elements hold up just as well as the future games in the series. I had expected to experience some extra jank with this game, but honestly, missed jumps and Altair going the wrong way happen much less frequently than I expected, certainly not enough to make it seem like the norm. If anything, this game having less traversal features than its successors actually provides less opportunity for jank, as there's less objects for the game to get confused by. The chases after an assassination are tense affairs as you try to break the line of sight of the entire city guard. The game encourages you to head to higher ground, as guards can block off streets and white cloth draped over objects signals the start of a route up to the rooftops. Even while not being chased, the streets are full of people who might accidentally barge you into a guard, or even just the desperate beggars who will often stop you dead in your tracks. The combat system here is another niggle that many people have with this game, but personally I find it enjoyable in short bursts. Judging by your health only regenerating outside of combat, I'd argue that it was meant as a last resort, rather than your main way of losing pursuers. While in a fight, other guards can come across you and join in, which can really drag out encounters. Combat itself is heavily based on good timing. Guards will block your attacks, and you have to hit the attack button when your weapon connects enough times to trigger the finisher. Early in the game, you can unlock counter-attacks, with your counter window size dependent on the size of your weapon. You can fight with either a sword, a dagger, or your hidden blade, with the hidden blade removing your ability to block. The smaller the weapon, the more precise your timing needs to be. Thankfully, the kill animations are satisfyingly gruesome, but a counter isn't always a guaranteed kill. The kingdom area between cities, however, is much less interesting, consisting entirely of collectible flags and packs of guards. The area is huge, so you'll need a horse to get around, but if you so much as trot past a guard, they will call for help and try to murder you dead. This makes the area a pain to explore, meaning I exclusively just galloped through the entire thing every time I went to a new city. However, the kingdom is noteworthy in the history of open world games as a whole, as it provides us with the very first example of Ubisoft towers. Have you ever played a game where you had to climb a tall thing to reveal parts of the map? This is where it all started. And honestly, having gone back to this game, I think now this is the only example of these towers that didn't become even a slight pain in the ass throughout the game. You climb a tower, synchronize your view, and part of your pause menu map is revealed. In the cities the same thing happens, but it also adds some mission markers to your compass. There isn't really a minimap here, as it only shows mission icons or your current objective, so you know which way to go. Every other game moving forward has a map here, which leads to that age-old problem of players mostly looking at a 2D representation of their surroundings, rather than the lovingly crafted 3D world that people crunched for several months on. This also means that once you've revealed 3 mission markers for each assassination target, there's no major benefit to activating other towers. During a chase, you'll have just as much information in front of you if you've activated no towers as you would have if you'd have done all of them. Sure, doing more towers gets you more familiar with the environments, but there's no feeling of obligation to do more of them. To my mind, this is the only game where this is true, including games from other series, and that is something I think is worth mentioning. Ubisoft towers are a good idea, they've just been done to death now, to the point where Ubisoft themselves make fun of them. The other thing this game does better than several others in the series is to paint shades of grey over everything, rather than have a black and white good and evil angle. This angle seemingly gets forgotten about for the Ezio trilogy, and from what I've played of Unity, I think it gets forgotten about again, but the Assassins and Templars are stated as both being after the same objective, peace and stability in the world. They're just going about it in different ways. While Altair stabs his way through his hit list, he is initially told each of them are complete bastards that need to die, and he often sees this for himself. Once he's stabbed them in the throat with an extended blade, however, they all get quite chatty and explain the reasoning for their actions. No one in life thinks themselves as doing evil. Good and evil are just different perceptions. What one person sees as exploitation, another could see as providing purpose and opportunity. Slave labour can build great things that benefit society, and medical experimentation can lead to discoveries that save countless lives. This angle is mirrored in both the historical and modern day stories here, and it almost leaves it up to the player to make up their own mind. Almost. Ultimately, the Templars are portrayed as the bad guys because they think they should force humanity into being good to each other, whereas the Assassins think that people should be allowed to make that choice for themselves. This got lost in the next game, where the Templars are just a list of arseholes who killed your dad, but we'll get to that. For me, this is partly what hooked me into the history of this universe, compelling villains who actually have some points to make you think. And this was released back before every villain got their own film explaining why they're actually the victim. All in all, I still think there's plenty of fun to be had with this game, but that does come with some caveats. For existing fans of the traditional style of Assassin's Creed game who missed this one, then it's definitely worth a play, as some of the details about the Assassins and Templars explored here doesn't get mentioned again. Anyone who did play this back in the day will get plenty of opportunity to get regular releases of those chemicals that your brain releases when you get a hit of nostalgia, even if it's just the noise that plays when you complete a mission, or the training guard's dialogue.
It seems my students do not fully understand what it is to wield a blade. Perhaps you could show them what you know. You must be busy. I understand.
But what about people who grew up with Origins and Odyssey who are interested in how the series started? I'd say not to start with this one. There are better examples of what these traditional games can be, and the limited and repetitive structure of this one might put people off trying other games in the series. I'd say it's better to return to this one once you've gotten to grips with another, more modern entry. As for people who've never played an Assassin's Creed game, I'd say play the second game first. Altair is a cocky git and it takes a while to become likeable. Start with Ezio's adventures to warm up with the series and then come back to visit this one. With this being the first game on this playthrough of the series, I can confidently place it squarely on the graph, making it both my most and least favourite game. Kind of a pointless graph at this stage, but it will get better as we go. Next up is Assassin's Creed 2, which many would consider to be the best in the series. At the moment, that's not my opinion, but we'll see if that changes as we go. I've not returned to AC2 since Brotherhood was released in 2010, so we'll see just how much I've forgotten in the decade or so since then. Once again, I'm streaming my playthroughs of these games over on Twitch. The link to my channel is in the description, and I stream 4 days a week, Monday to Thursday. So please do pop over and say hello, or tell me how shit my opinion is, whatever you fancy.
Do you see the irony in all this? No, not yet it seems. But you will.